They told me I was too aggressive to raise a child. But the boy they abandoned calls me mom, and they call him their biggest regret. The conference room smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. I sat across from three faces that had already decided my fate before I even walked through the door. Two women with practiced smiles that never reached their eyes, and a man whose soft voice carried the weight of 1,000 rejections. I should have known right then. Should have seen the way their eyes lingered on my tailored blazer. The way they flinched when I spoke with conviction instead of apology. But I was naive enough to believe that wanting to love a child would be enough. How wrong I was. My name is Jade, and I spent 36 years of my life building armor. Corporate law does not reward the gentle. Charlotte's courtrooms taught me that weakness gets you eaten alive, that hesitation costs clients everything they have worked for. I learned to speak with authority, because whispers get ignored. I learned to stand tall because slouching suggests defeat. I learned to ask the hard questions because someone has to fight for what is right. What I never learned was how to make myself smaller for people who could not handle my size. The rejection hit me like a physical blow. "You are qualified," the lead caseworker said, her voice carrying that particular tone reserved for delivering devastating news gently. "Your home study passed. Your background check is spotless. Your financial situation is more than adequate." I waited for the but. There is always a but. "But we do not think your personality is the right fit for fostering." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire I had not seen coming. "Could you elaborate on that?" I asked, my lawyer instincts kicking in before my heart could fully process the blow. They exchanged glances. The universal look of people who had rehearsed this conversation, but hoped they would not have to have it. "You are very direct," the second woman offered, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "Direct," I repeated. Not a question. A statement waiting for clarification. "We worry about how a child with trauma would respond to someone with such a strong presence." Strong presence. As if my strength was a weapon instead of a shield. As if the very qualities that made me successful in protecting families in court somehow disqualified me from protecting a child in my home. I leaned forward, my voice steady despite the fury building in my chest. "Do you give this same feedback to male applicants? Do you tell men they are too direct, too strong, too intense to parent?" Silence. The kind of silence that screams louder than any argument. The man with the soft voice finally spoke. "We just think children need nurturing, gentle guidance. Someone who can provide a calm environment." I stood up then, my chair pushing back with more force than I intended. "I see." 2 words. That was all I gave them. Because what could I say? That I had spent my entire childhood being told I was too much? Too loud, too smart, too stubborn, too everything? That I had clawed my way out of a system that tried to break me, only to be told by another system that my survival made me unfit to help someone else survive? I walked out of that building with my dignity intact and my heart shattered. But I was not done fighting. 2 months later, my phone rang on a Tuesday that started like any other. Coffee at 6, emails by 6:30, first client meeting at 8. I was reviewing case files when an unknown number lit up my screen. "Ms. Halston? This is Keisha Washington from Bright Futures Adoption Services. I was wondering if you might have a few minutes to talk about a child who needs a home." I almost hung up. Almost let my wounded pride win. "I was rejected by the county system," I said instead. "They felt I was not suitable." "I know," Keisha replied, and something in her voice made me sit up straighter. "I also know you have been advocating for foster children in family court for the past 3 years. Pro bono work. Fighting for kids who do not have anyone else fighting for them." She had done her homework. "There is a boy," she continued. 7 years old. "His name is Tyson. He has been in the system for 2 years now, and honestly, he needs someone who is not going to give up on him when things get difficult. Someone who knows how to fight." My heart stopped. What happened to him? His parents died in a car accident when he was 5. Extended family took him in initially, but... She paused, and I could hear papers shuffling. "They returned him to the system after 8 months. Said he was too much work. Too angry. Too broken. Too much." Those words again. But this time, they were not being used to tear down. They were being used to explain why a child needed someone who understood what it meant to be called too much and refused to shrink. Would you be willing to meet him? Keisha asked. I was already reaching for my keys. I will be there in an hour. The children's shelter smelled like industrial detergent and sadness. I had been in places like this before, both as a child myself and later as an attorney, but walking through those doors as a potential parent felt different. Heavier. More important. Keisha led me through hallways lined with motivational posters that felt more like desperate wishes than promises. We stopped outside a room where I could see a small figure hunched over a table, aggressively coloring what looked like a black scribble covering an entire page. That is Tyson, she said softly. He has been having a rough morning. Through the window, I watched this tiny boy pour his anger onto paper with such intensity that he tore through to the pages beneath. His dark hair was sticking up in every direction, and even from where I stood, I could see the tension in his small shoulders. He looked exactly like I felt most days. What makes him angry? I asked. Everything, Keisha admitted. New people. Old people. Questions about his parents. Questions about his family. Being asked to smile when he does not feel like smiling. Being told he should be grateful when all he wants is to go home to a home that does not exist anymore. I understood that anger. Had carried it myself for years before I learned to weaponize it for good instead of letting it destroy me from the inside. Can I meet him? We walked into the room together. Tyson looked up with eyes that were far too old for his 7-year-old face. Brown eyes that had seen too much, trusted too little, hoped too carefully. Tyson, Keisha said gently. This is Ms. Jade. She wanted to meet you. He studied me with the careful assessment of someone who had learned that adults were not automatically safe. I did not try to smile at him, did not crouch down to his level, or speak in the sing-song voice people use with children they pity. Instead, I pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. That is some serious coloring, I said, nodding toward his paper. What are you making? It is not making anything, he replied, his voice sharp with defensive anger. It is just angry. Angry is okay, I said. Sometimes angry is exactly what we need to be. He looked at me then. Really looked. Like he was trying to figure out if I was lying or just stupid. Most people say I should not be angry, he said carefully. Most people have not lost their parents and been bounced around by people who promised to take care of them, I replied. Most people do not know what angry feels like when it is the only thing keeping you safe. His crayon stopped moving. You know about angry? He asked. I am an expert at angry, I told him. I use my angry to help people in court. What do you think we should do with yours? For the first time since I had walked into that room, Tyson smiled. Just a little. Just enough. Can I think about it? He asked. You can think about it as long as you need, I said. I will be here when you decide. That was the moment I knew he was my son. The transition was not smooth. Nothing about Tyson was smooth, and I loved him for it. He came home with me 3 weeks later, carrying everything he owned in a garbage bag, and wearing an expression that dared me to disappoint him. His first night he tested me. I do not like bedtime stories, he announced when I suggested reading together. Okay, I said. What do you like? Nothing. That is fair. Want to sit here and like nothing together for a while. He was not expecting that response. I could see it in the way his defenses wavered slightly. We sat on his new bed in his new room, surrounded by nothing but silence and the possibility of everything. After 20 minutes he spoke. Do you think I am too much? My heart broke and mended itself in the same breath. I think you are exactly the right amount of you, I said. And if someone cannot handle that, it is their problem, not yours. That is what you said about yourself when they would not let you be a foster mom, is not it? Smart kid. Too smart for his own good, probably. Yes, I said. That is exactly what I said about myself. Good, he said, settling back against his pillows. I like that you are too much too. That night, we were both too much together, and it was perfect. The first few months were a masterclass in patience I had never planned to take. Tyson had nightmares that left him screaming for parents who would never answer. He had panic attacks in grocery stores when too many people got too close. He broke things when he was overwhelmed and could not find words big enough for his feelings. And through it all, I never once thought he was too much. Because I knew what it felt like to be a child whose emotions were bigger than the adults around them could handle. I taught him that angry was okay, but hurting people was not. I showed him how to use his words like weapons when he needed to defend himself, and like bridges when he wanted to connect with others. When he threw a lamp across the living room because his teacher had called him difficult, I did not punish him. I sat with him while he cried. And then we went to the store together to pick out a new lamp. "Why are not you mad at me?" he asked as we compared lampshades. "Because you were not trying to hurt me," I said. "You were trying to make the hurt inside you smaller, and sometimes we all make mistakes when we are hurting." "But I broke your stuff." "Stuff can be replaced. You cannot. And you are more important than stuff." He cried then. The good kind of crying that washes pain away instead of drowning you in it. 6 months after Tyson came home, I got a message on social media that made my blood run cold. "Hi, I am Tyson's aunt." I saw a picture of him on a mutual friend's page, and he looks so happy now. I was wondering if maybe I could reach out to him? Send him a gift? I know we made mistakes, but we have been thinking about him and we miss him. I stared at that message for a full 10 minutes, watching my anger build from a simmer to a rolling boil. These people had given up on him, had handed him back to the system like a defective product with a receipt. And now that someone else had done the hard work of helping him heal, they wanted back in? I showed the message to Tyson. Not because I was considering saying yes, but because he deserved to know that people from his past were trying to reconnect. He read it twice, his face cycling through emotions I could not quite identify. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think," he said slowly, "that they should have thought about missing me before they gave me away." Out of the mouths of babes. I wrote back a single sentence. He is not a second chance for people who gave up on the first one. Then I blocked her. Because Tyson was not a consolation prize for their guilt. He was not a feel-good story they could claim credit for. He was my son, and I was his mother, and we had built something beautiful from the pieces everyone else had discarded. They did not get to claim him now that he was whole. A year later, Tyson asked me the question that would become one of my most treasured memories. We were making pancakes on a Saturday morning, and he was telling me about a dream he had where we lived in a castle and had a pet dragon named Steve. "Mom," he said, and my heart still skipped a beat every time he called me that. "Did I make you a mom, or were you already a mom before me?" I stopped flipping pancakes and looked at this incredible child who had taught me that love is not gentle. Love is fierce. Love fights. Love refuses to give up even when everyone else thinks you should. "I was ready to be a mom," I said. "But you made it official." He beamed at me with syrup on his chin and magic in his eyes. "Good," he said. "Because I was ready to have a mom, and you made that official too." Today, Tyson is 10 years old. He plays trumpet in the school band and asks questions that make his teachers both proud and exhausted. He builds elaborate science experiments in our backyard and writes stories about superheroes who save the world by being too stubborn to give up. Last week, he came home from school with a permission slip for a field trip. "All the other kids need their parents to sign this," he said, handing me the paper. "But I need my mom to sign it. Is there a difference?" I asked. "Parents are the people who made you," he said with the matter-of-fact wisdom that 10-year-olds sometimes possess. "Moms are the people who choose you every single day." He was right. And every single day, I choose him. I choose his big emotions and his bigger dreams. I choose his questions that come at the worst possible times and his hugs that come at exactly the right moments. I choose to be the mom who fights for him, advocates for him, believes in him even when he cannot believe in himself. I choose to be too much, because he deserves nothing less. 6 months ago, I received an invitation that felt like the universe's sense of humor in action. The same panel that had rejected me 4 years earlier wanted me to speak at their annual foster care symposium. They had heard about my success story with Tyson and thought I might have valuable insights to share with prospective foster parents. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud at my kitchen table while Tyson did homework and asked me why I was making weird noises. "Sometimes," I told him, "life is funnier than any joke we could make up." I declined their invitation. Instead, I sent them a framed photograph of Tyson and me from our last vacation. We were standing on a beach in South Carolina, both of us grinning like we had just discovered something amazing. On the back, I wrote, aggressive enough to fight for him, gentle enough to never stop loving him, bold enough to know that sometimes the best families are built by people everyone else underestimated. Because that is the truth they could not see 4 years ago. The children who need homes are not looking for perfect parents. They are looking for parents who will not give up when things get hard. Parents who understand that healing is messy and love is complicated and family is something you build together, not something you are born into. They need parents who are too much in all the right ways. Too persistent to quit. Too stubborn to walk away. Too fierce to let anyone hurt their child. Too bold to apologize for taking up space in a world that tells them they should be smaller. They need parents like us. Tyson calls me mom now, and I call him my greatest adventure. The people who gave up on him call him a loss, but they are wrong. He was never a loss. He was just waiting for someone who was brave enough to win. And every night, when I tuck him into bed and he tells me about his day and his dreams and his plans to change the world, I am grateful for every person who told me I was too much. Because if I had been less, I never would have been enough for him. If I had been quieter, I never would have heard him calling for someone to understand his loudness. If I had been gentler, I never would have been strong enough to fight for him when everyone else gave up. I was exactly the right amount of too much for the child who needed someone who would never be too little. And now, every morning when he hugs me goodbye before school and tells me he loves me, I remember that the best parts of ourselves are often the parts other people cannot handle. The parts that make us too much are usually the same parts that make us exactly enough for someone who has been told their whole life that they are too much too. We found each other because we were both too much for everyone else. And together, we are exactly the right amount of everything. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring true stories about love, family, and never giving up on the people who matter most. Your support helps us share stories that remind us all that sometimes being too much is exactly what the world needs. Hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments about a time when being too much turned out to be exactly enough.